Well,
Hey everybody, thanks for joining. We've got a bunch of folks from NewCipher and Keep and Bison Trails and Victor, community people here. Victor, I think in a community member capacity. And we are going to talk about in particular, the most recent proposal, the rc0, which is like release candidate proposal that we would like to put forward for a signal snapshot starting tomorrow, ideally. And so today's call is going to be basically we'll give a recap of that and the mechanics for how that works, which we're very excited with the status of it. And then obviously we want to open that up to the floor and to all of you all for questions, comments, concerns, input, so that if we are able to start the signal tomorrow, hopefully this will help all of you have a very thorough understanding of the proposal, and so you know what you're sort of voicing your opinion on. And then, we can also, of course, discuss just the collaboration in general and, things beyond the scope of this proposal as well, if people have questions about that. So Victor, do you want to walk through the proposal, or would you like me to do that, or how should we kick things off?
I'm happy to do it. Okay. So, at a high level, a lot of the bones of the proposal are still there. The main problem that we were solving for, that was quite a challenging problem, is how to structure the upgrade in a combination of the networks in such a way that it was didn't create an unnecessary, not realistic, consequence for a lot of folks, and was a really smooth transition that people can very easily opt into and had some optionality there. And so we worked with some tax advisors and just got their feedback on what this can look like and how we're thinking about going forward with it. And so that's how we landed on a variation of the second proposal, or the second approach rather, from the original T6 proposal. And that had to do more with wrapping and unwrapping. And thank you, Milane, for posting the link. Yeah, if anybody wants to pull it up, you guys are welcome to. And so the idea around this upgrade or this merge is to really think about it from the perspective of, when we look at software, right, and we look at a video game or an iPhone app or iPhone software or whatever it is, you want to be able to have optionality in that you want to be able to upgrade to newer stuff that has better features and more capabilities and fixes bugs and all that stuff. You also want to be able to have the option to remain on the prior software version, and you want people to be able to go back and forth between them as well. And that if you want to get the old one, you're welcome to get it. And I think that when we think about both Keep Network and NewCipher, one of the nice things is that it is much more of a software than it is it's not meant to be a money. It's not meant to be, just platform for smart contracts. Not meant to be an Ethereum. It really is meant to be software that accomplishes very specific purposes and has a modular component around useful work that it is performing, right, for both networks. And so, having all that in mind, the realization that we came to is that really what this is a software upgrade, in much more of a traditional sense than we even originally realized. And so from that perspective, the process by which folks will be able to join the Keanu network is really going to be extremely similar to what we've experienced with a traditional software upgrade, right? Except here, the way you do it is you actually just wrap your tokens, your Keep or new tokens, and you receive T, and then you're able to use T to participate on the Keanu network. And the Keanu network will have functionality, and it'll be able to do things. It'll have TBTC v2 going live shortly after mainnet launch, and we think that Keanu will have a lot of we'll be having a lot of stuff built on it. Both the Keep and new server teams will be spending their time continuing to upgrade and build on Keanu, and so it'll be like a very natural progression as a software upgrade. But if for some reason folks wanted to go back to either Keep or new, they would be able to go backwards as well, and so they'd be able to unwrap their T for their original tokens. And note, this is not like fungible in that it's not like it's a contract that's open to anyone, and like any Keep or any new can go back and forth to T. It's really like, hey, you're an individual that upgraded from your Keep or your new to T, and you are able to go the opposite way, but that ability to do so is not like transferable. It is unique to you, and it is gated by the amount of tokens that you had originally. And so it's much more of a software upgrade than it is like a CDP approach or like a generalized wrapping unwrapping. Like, this is an upgrade. So that's a core single most important thing that folks need to evaluate, think about, provide feedback on. Any kind of concerns or commentary is extremely important to hear. We feel relatively good with this approach, very good. But of course, if somebody can think of something better, or has identified some kind of problems with this, it's really important that we hear it. Not like we meaning like both communities, not like me and whoever. So that's the most important part. The other parts are the token factors will remain the same. We adjusted the token supply up to 10 billion for easier math, and also because of unit bias, because folks like tokens that they think are cheap. They prefer buying tokens that have like a low dollar value rather than a high dollar value, which seem expensive. That specific component actually got quite a bit of feedback, and so happy to talk about it more like later on in this call. Hear what everybody else will say. In the meantime, I'm going to cover the rest of the proposal, then we can come back to it. The other bits that are important there is we had kind of like a high level framework for an inflationary model in the original T6 proposal. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for pulling it up. So yeah, and what we decided here is that, it's hard to vote on all of the things at the same time, right? And there's a lot of elements that we're leaving up for as implementation details as part of this. And so this proposal doesn't try to explain how the DAO is going to work or how voting is going to happen or how any of that process is going to work. And we decided to add inflation to that list because it is a super nuanced topic. And we really want for this proposal to just focus on the merge rather than all the other details. And so the other proposal still does exist in T6. It is still available for discussion. It will not be the only proposal that will be under consideration. To be very clear, there will be other proposals submitted. There will be a lot of conversations about it. Thankfully, we do have quite a bit of time to evaluate all alternatives and come to a consensus as a community on how we do inflation. And the nice thing is that because it's such a meaty topic, we don't need to solve it right now. Like right now, the only thing we need to focus on is the merge. But then obviously in time for Keanu to go live, like all of these details will need to be figured out. And so those will be decided ultimately also by governance. So those are like the main components. The token split that we talked about is still the same, right? 45, 45, 10, with 10% going to the DAO. There is still the intention of funding the DAO through some portion of inflation, but of course that's implementation detail that we're leaving up to the community and are going to have multiple proposals on for sure. But that's going to be like the meat of it. And then from a timeline perspective, as McLean mentioned, we're trying to. I'm going to zoom into this a little bit. We're trying to make have this proposal be submitted to governance on both networks, ideally tomorrow if we can swing it, and if we have like general consensus on this call and like general consensus in the forums, then it'll be submitted tomorrow. If we don't, and there's like a lot of things up for debate, then we can always do it like later on in a couple of days, or like early next week or mid next week, or something that gives enough time for people to contribute, but also like doesn't delay it unnecessarily if there's general alignment. So we're trying to get that done ASAP. That will allow the teams to start sprinting towards the full integration. As part of it, there's like a lot of like nuances that need to be solved for, right? In the same way that there was with the T6 proposal, which is that you have folks that are currently staking, whose tokens aren't liquid, they can't just wrap them by themselves. So you want to be able to transition them so they can either like stake directly if they're staking, or if they're in some kind of locked state, to have a way to transition those. So that's something to be figured out. The counter network will be built out. The wrapping the mechanism will be built out. So there's a lot of work to be done, and that's what the teams are going to be focusing on. And so ideally, sometime in July, over the next 2 months, like the bulk of that work will be done, and then sometime in August, the network can launch. And again, this is not like official timelines, to be extremely clear. This is like Ben and mine like conversations with folks of like, hey, what could it look like at a high level? So let's not hold the teams to this, because there are a lot of things that need to be solved. But this is just like our estimates of like how quickly can we get this done. Oh, sorry, I heard somebody speak, but kind of cut out for a second. So the last thing is, we want for Keanu to be live for a little bit before TBTC V2 launches on it. And so you could expect for TBTC V2, yeah, there are no official timelines. That's absolutely right. Thank you, Matt. So there's going to be some delay between when Keanu launches and when TBTC V2 launches, because we want to make sure that the network is stable, that there's any bugs are ironed out, that there's enough stakers on mainnet, and everything is safe and good to go. So that's a high level. McLean, Matt, Derek, or anybody else, is there anything that I missed that you think is important to highlight before we start taking questions and feedback?
Sure. I mean, first off, like, thanks Victor and Ben, who unfortunately isn't able to join today, and all the other community members and New Cypher and Keep team members who contributed to this and all the other proposals. I think it was a really sort of interesting and novel example of like decentralized collaboration and making this happen like from the community as opposed to top down from the dev teams. I think it's been a super interesting but also difficult experience at times that we're sort of pioneering together as two communities. But yeah, I think that was a great overview. I think like the things to note, or just to reiterate, is the nice thing about this proposal is like one of the principles of it, and a few of the other proposals as well, is like this no token left behind. So we wanted to make sure that people that are maybe not able to pay attention day to day in the Discord and following along super closely aren't going to be somehow disadvantaged because they didn't upgrade in time. So the nice thing about this is, assuming that both the new and the Keep networks suspend their inflation, then these conversion factors or upgrade factors ratios will be fixed. So whether you upgrade your new or your Keep the first day of Keanu, or you upgrade it 6 months from now or a year from now, you're going to get the same rate. So you're not punished for being late. And so that's just I think one thing to note that people have expressed concerns about previously. Yeah, otherwise, I think just to reiterate the timeline, we'd like to move this forward for a signal tomorrow. And the way that we're proposing to do that is you can either vote in favor of this release candidate proposal, or say that you prefer one of the previous proposals, or just say, I don't like any of these proposals. I think we need to revisit this from scratch. I think, like, from my personal perspective, I think from my personal perspective, we feel really good about this RC0 proposal. I think it covers a lot of the edge cases and risks that we were concerned about. So I think it's probably like the optimal solution that we've been able to land on after a couple of iterations of the previous 6 proposals. So I personally feel very good about it. But if there's anything about the proposal that folks don't like or that is not clear, I think at this point, unless anyone else wants to chime in, we can we can turn it over to you all for questions and comments and your input.
Just to jump in really quick and talk a little bit more about why we landed on this mechanic for the vote for the signals. We also feel really comfortable with this proposal. I think it takes sort of some of the best aspects from all of the previous proposals, but at the same time, similar to this concept of no token holder left behind, we also wanted to somehow make it so that no proposal was left behind in a final vote, especially on the Keep side. With the Keep community, we know that some of you guys preferred that we had multiple proposals reach a vote, not just a final one, even though everybody seems to be happy with the final one. So the way that we decided to include that in the vote mechanic was to have this option for I propose or I prefer a different proposal.
Whoever is the admin on the same room, feel free to mute people with abandon.
So I've got a question. What happens if snapshots voting are different on the 2 forums?
It's going great, man.
How is your cryptocurrency?
That's a really good question. I think for me, if the 2 communities go split, to me that's kind of a vote for back to the drawing board. I would say of all of the choices, that's probably the least clear to folks who are trying to coordinate governance. So
yeah, I think it would depend on like the reason for the split. So we'd probably need some, we'd probably need to gather like the reasoning and behind people's signals in that case. And it could be that it's like an easy fix, like one community or one subset of one of the communities doesn't like some aspect of the proposal, for example, that maybe is an easy fix, or maybe there's sort of something more fundamental that we need to sort of go back to the drawing board on. So I think it depends on kind of the why behind the split.
that is also kind of the downside of this 3 option poll that we're talking about here. But at the end of the day, we felt like it was wrong to only present a single option or other, and providing a third gave people more voice. But yeah, that's a very real risk, and deal with it.
Actually, I guess like a request I will make, if you are participating in the signals and you decide you do not like the rc0 proposal and you vote for either one of the other proposals or going back to the drawing board, it would be very helpful if you comment in either the New Cipher DAO forum or the Keep Governance forum with your reasoning and why, so that we have that context.
Yeah,
100%.
and even if somebody, this is Victor, by the way, if somebody doesn't feel comfortable for whatever reason commenting in a public forum, like feel free to DM anybody that's working on it. Feel free to DM me or Ben or McLean or Matt or Will or any of the guys. Express your thoughts. You don't have to take a public stance, but like we need to hear the feedback. And what that'll allow us to do is then like try to validate it and see who else is feeling this way, and try to see if like changes are needed, or if we can like help you frame out your thinking around it, and then you can like talk about it more publicly, or whatever path that takes. So please don't hesitate. Please reach out. Your voice is extremely important, and none of this is possible without you.
100%. And that's part of the reason why up to this point in the process, we've been so proactive about at every stage asking for feedback from the community. So I also think that right, if you're going to vote in the signal and you have a big reason why you don't like RC0, now is also a great time to bring it up so that we can discuss as a community, because at the end of the day, if you have a problem, you're probably not the only person that has a problem, that has a similar problem or a similar question. So now is a really good time to bring up any concerns that anybody has in either community.
I have a question, actually. I was gonna say, comment how today NU Cipher made it to top 5 gainers in Coinbase, and I'm sure that's gonna get a lot of new people to like look into this. So when the proposal is done, the name of NU Cipher will change. Is it going to change to what's it going to change to again? Is it RAP-T or?
So
So-
the nice thing about this proposal is that it's actually not going to be changing, right? It's a brand new token that's going to be created. And so what an exchange like Coinbase, as an example, could do, or any other exchange that supports new or keep or both, is that they can continue the trading of all of the assets. They could give people the option of essentially like doing the wrapping without moving off of the exchange. So essentially the exchange can do it in the background on their own. And the third option is that the exchange can say like, hey, everybody is getting upgraded. And then it's up to you if you want to not get upgraded, in which case you have to move your assets off of the exchange. And that way they only have to do it once. And then they like wouldn't support the previous trading pairs. So there's a couple of options there, but in all scenarios, all of the tokens will continue to, exist for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so like new and keep are both ERC20 tokens. Like, there's no way for us or anyone to like reach into your address and upgrade them or like automatically, or to just take them from you. Like, it's just not possible. So it's like you have to, if you're holding them in your own address, you have to actively opt into this upgrade. And so you would basically interact with this wrapping upgrade contract to upgrade your new or your keep into T. And I see Joshua had a question of, that would entail some gas fee that you had to pay to the Ethereum network. However, if an exchange decides to do this on behalf of their users, they might sort of just do a lot of that on your behalf and just obfuscate sort of what's happening at the base layer. And so I can imagine that they would just upgrade all of their new and all of their keep to T, for example. And that's potentially like the new, the new ticker. But in terms of like name, like we've been throwing around T, that's one possibility, but we're open to other possibilities. But T would be like probably like a shorthand for like threshold network or something as a possible name and brand for this upgraded network.
And Ori, given your, it's cool how attentive you've been to the motions of new over time. I didn't like T at first. I'm not good at naming things. I didn't like T at first, and I've always hated Keanu. I mean, hated maybe too strong. But I think like there is perhaps like if blockchain tech is going to take off, there's a need for a transition, I think, in the next like 2 to 5 years where we start to actually identify with some surgical precision what the building blocks of the new internet are. And I think that I'm coming around to the idea of this upgrading the network to a single letter ticker of T, with part of the assertion being that we are starting to hone in on maybe what the 26, let's say, if there were one for each letter of the alphabet, 26 building blocks of the new internet are. Well, one of them is a scheme of threshold cryptographic primitives all sort of living on this network. Another might be video encoding, another is SQL schema, and so if we imagine rethinking not only the enterprise web, but the entire internet in terms of the building blocks that we need to make a decentralized one. Part of what I think we're saying here is that we're staking our claim to be part of that top level building block of a single letter ticker, where we're saying we will be the domain of community threshold cryptographic necessary.
Yeah.
Is Axel okay?
I will.
Admin, you can always mute.
Oh, I was gonna say thank you for that. I actually didn't think about it from the 26 building block perspective, and I really like that. I don't feel extremely strongly one way or the other on T. I think it's a good name, but the 26 building block meme, I'm gonna call it, has been ingrained in my brain now. So now I really like it.
I've also confirmed with a bunch of exchanges that they can do single letter ticker. So it would be nice to be the first one, and kind of like, I think that that's something like New has going for it as a ticker. It's just looking different.
It's very prestigious on stock exchange to have a single letter, so maybe we could start that for crypto.
Yes, I like that plan.
And I mean,
I like that too.
If we're trying to hold that, if we're trying to hold ourselves to that prestige, I think obviously it also then means that as a community, we need to take that seriously and recognize that we are trying to be the building blocks of some kind of the new motions of the internet. And that perhaps one day we will have a relationship with a couple of dozen other single layer tickers, where people are bringing them together in the logic of their application to build something the same way that you do today with a front-end library and a back-end library and an SQL database and your server operations and your authentication. You can imagine a small number of single letter libraries coming together to be the building blocks of whatever this next internet is going to be. And so I think that responsibility, if that's the basis of that prestige, that's a responsibility that I think is exciting and one that, these teams, I think, I certainly can speak for myself, are interested in.
I agree. And you know what? The other thing is, it's funny. We're talking about tickers.
Making money. That's
It's funny. I have a child behind me asleep, and so that might happen to me in a few minutes. We're talking about tickers, which is like really pragmatic and financial. But this whole question is also a question of like, what is our flag? Like, what is the shared ideal that our community is striving to build and support and grow? And I think that that's going to mean everything for us becoming one community and for us growing. So no, I love that building block idea. I think it's really strong.
I see that
I've got a question.
J Stringfellow. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Hope you guys are doing well. I think this is a really cool forum. So the merger between New and Keep, I was hoping I could get some insight on if you guys think there's a technical advantage you guys have over another project like Bren. They also have a wrapped Bitcoin solution. Could you maybe, I'd love to hear from you guys the delegation solution, or how, because I've looked into some of how they try and keep the network secure. Sure. If you could just list how we're trying to keep this new project just technically savvy.
Yeah, so you guys, a lot of you guys have heard my comments on Ren before, so I'll try to keep it light and pass it off to the new Cypher team so I don't get too ranty. But a really, really big difference between the direction that we've taken and the direction that a team like the RIN project has taken is that we've basically refused to make sacrifices for user fund safety. In particular, we've heavily indexed toward depositor safety and censorship resistance. And so that's why today, if you scroll down DeFi polls, TBTC is the only Bitcoin peg they list as decentralized, and the rest are hybrid or centralized. And so I'm really proud that the team on the Keep side has shipped that. And I think what we can do as a joint network is embrace the next step, which is how can we have that like decentralization steel man, and also actually scale to potentially millions of users. And so if you look at a project like RIN, what they've said is, okay, well, basically the team will custody the Bitcoin. And they've done this in a way that's like technical and it looks good and it requires 13 computers, but they're team controlled. And they've said, okay, well, to make that more secure, we'll add specialized hardware. But with our approach, we don't use specialized hardware, which can be easily taken over by one or two members of the supply chain. And we stay censorship resistant. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about hacked funds or funds from Iran, or, it doesn't matter if you're politically popular or unpopular. It doesn't matter what country you're from. This is software that you can use because there's not a company that's ever taking control. There's not any legal risk to a company. And there's not risk to you of seizure. So I think that's a big difference in the approach. Obviously, T will be more than TBTC v2. But that's a big piece. I think you'll see the same thing with proxy re-encryption, with the random beacon, and with future work that we do, is that we're not taking shortcuts where any of the dev team is holding funds or holding special keys, and we really just we want to ship the best product possible first try.
Yeah, I think that was a good summary, and just to reiterate a couple of those points, like so NuCypher is we consider ourselves like a cryptography project, and I think Keep views themselves the same way. And what that means is, like, whether it's for custody of Bitcoin or other assets, or whether it's for like privacy preserving use cases, we're not, well, I think in general, neither of our teams are particularly interested in using things like Intel SGX or like secure enclaves that are kind of like quick and easy solutions that I think unfortunately don't really work. So we're much more interested in developing cryptography, mathematically provable, secure solutions that may take longer to develop, but are like, we feel really good about, and that we feel are really, really solid. So there's that point where we're both focused on cryptography. And I think the other point is, we want to do things in a truly decentralized way. So we don't want to take shortcuts where there's like, potentially like a multi-sig controlled by a handful of known people, but like a truly decentralized Bitcoin and Ethereum solution where, there are thousands of nodes all around the world controlled by permission that anyone can permissionlessly run. You don't need to be on a whitelist or anything like that. That is truly permissionless to use and censorship resistant, and robust against, any kind of or like sort of the range of potential risks and attacks that you could imagine, whether it's a government sponsored attack or things like, or insider attack, things like that. So I think my view is that the NuCypher and Keep teams and communities are both very aligned on that front. And we've both proven that we can build networks and solutions that are that fit up to that standard. I guess when things are going great, it's great to take shortcuts when things are working, but when things
Mhm.
aren't working well, that's when I think the rubber really hits the road and you're like, oh, wow, okay, maybe that shortcut wasn't the right thing to do.
What else, guys? Feel free to drop questions in the chat as well.
Or comments. If you like what you see, let us know.
Yeah, well, I could ask another one. I mean, this is my favorite project that I think the merger has a lot of potential. I'd love to hear from maybe one of you guys, maybe somebody on the Keep side, why they would like to merge with New, and somebody on the New side, the advantage of merging with the Keep network, because the info I've gathered, I think there are I would just like to hear it from the developers themselves.
Sure. On the Keep side, and I'll keep it short if anyone else in the Keep team wants to jump in. What got me excited here is two things. So one is strategic, right? I think that we want more stakers. We want to ship V2 in a way that is really robust from day one. And right now, TBTC V1 has, maybe 200 stakers, which is good, but it's not great. So I'm really excited on the one hand to get New Cypher's community of stakers involved and running the network. But then on the culture and team side, I think that we have been working in each other's periphery for a long time. And it's funny because over it's been 4 years, now, it becomes clear who actually holds the values of the space and who's just in it for a quick buck. And I think there's just a lot of respect on the Keep side for what New Cypher's built and the team that they put together and how they look at problems. So I'll throw it out if anyone else on the Keep side wants to take it up, or back to New Cypher.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Matt there. Another thing that I'm personally really excited for from a community perspective is I think that the New community and the Keep community are a little bit different, but each have their own pros and strengths. So I think when we combine into one big community, I'm really excited to see what we can build together as one merged community.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the New Cypher perspective, a lot of the motivation is very similar. I think the teams and communities are very aligned, which is good. I think we want to achieve a lot of the same things. And I think just from a practical technical standpoint, I think Keep is the most similar network to New Cypher as it stands today, which is it's like a threshold cryptography network. And not only today, but I think the vision that both teams have for their current networks are very similar in the long term, which is that New Cypher doesn't want to just only be a proxy re-encryption network, and Keep doesn't want to just only be a threshold signature TBTC network, but basically to be platforms for any kind of arbitrary threshold cryptography. So that means, yes, that means proxy re-encryption, that means threshold signatures, random beacon, but it also means future primitives like DKG, distributed key generation, or Shamir secret sharing, or other things that we might be able to envision use cases or demand for. And I think that basically the thesis is there's a lot of value in combining those efforts because the visions are so closely aligned into one network with a shared set of stakers, a shared community, multiple dev teams, working on the same network, which I think, probably other than Ethereum and Cosmos, is one of the very few networks where that will actually be the case. So I think that's very, very interesting and a compelling feature of this upgraded network. And I think there's also some short-term considerations for both sides. I think Keep wants to launch TBTC V2, and they need a lot of nodes to do that. And we were, also interested in launching a decentralized wrapped Bitcoin on New Cypher, and so this just opportunistic short-term thing as well, where we can come together to accelerate both of our short-term roadmaps on that front.
Awesome.
So to that point about being a platform for many different solutions, is it way too early to even ask what other kinds of use cases and solutions might come after TBTC? Or even just like personal interest among the teams and community?
No, heck no. We talk about it all the time in our in our Discord, man. I mean, threshold signatures for any number of wrapped assets. I think threshold ring signatures for Monero is a multi-million-dollar idea. Whoever pushes it over the line. Distributed key generation, especially for our proxy re-encryption, but also going forward with other access management and access control projects, has some very, very interesting and bizarre consequences that I think are going to be a lot of fun. And essentially, to broaden it to anything you can think of where a small cohort of nodes among a large fleet of nodes achieves something powerful. And, you know, politically, we know, you know, the old adage, of course, that a small group of people can change the world. Don't ever think that a small group of people can't change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. You know, that when you apply that to cryptographic power structures, the most obvious manifestation of that concept are the threshold primitives. And so I think, like, you know, anything where we can think of where a small cohort of nodes can achieve, you know, some kind of political and economic motions that are benefit the entire community becomes super interesting. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, distributed key generation using cheaper consensus, subsequent threshold signature schemes, maybe even proxy re-signatures if we can ever think of a use case for that. And then circling back around on proxy re-encryption, which I think is a really, really very groovy primitive, you know, that if we can get to a point where despite the gas situation, we can bring the cost down, I think that proxy re-encryption hasn't even begun to have its full day in the sun with respect to what it can do for different projects.
Yeah, and practically, like, I think we've seen a lot of interest recently in creating, like, so there's two projects in particular that are like very recent, and it's sort of driven by this sort of recent interest in NFTs. But there's a project called Masterfile that's working to create an open DRM standard, so they can help legacy brands sort of get comfortable with using NFTs and putting their content on Ethereum, and sort of having proxy re-encryption be kind of a core primitive of this decentralized DRM that they're creating. And then there's another one called Creaton, which is sort of like a crypto native OnlyFans that helps creators monetize their content. And there's a couple other sort of even earlier stage projects in those that are sort of exploring similar things. And then we've also got a couple community members that are looking to extend or create some kind of bridge or integration with like Cosmos and Polkadot, where a lot of this Web3 stuff is happening as well. So it'll be interesting to bring proxy re-encryption to those ecosystems.
I still think, and have for a long time, that blockchain games are going to play an important role in our future. And I think that within the realm of blockchain gaming, that using proxy re-encryption to keep in-game secrets, using threshold signatures of one kind or another, or proxy re-signature schemes, in order to bestow or realize the effects of in-game abilities, depending on what type of game it is. I think these are potentially huge. I think that threshold cryptographic primitives and multiplayer gaming are a very, very obvious match. It's not obvious how they will match up, and that depends on obviously the economies of games and whether games come to light. I think they will. I think that gaming drives a lot of innovation, not only in the internet, but in the history of humanity. So I mean, a lot of what I look toward is a lot of my lens is trying to understand how we fit into the eventual gaming picture.
And then I think Brandon had a couple questions around like how you should think about valuing the token. So both new and keep are work tokens, and this upgraded T token will similarly be a work token, which means that it is used to stake and to run a node, and then to provide these threshold cryptography services. So if there is demand for these threshold cryptography services, if there's demand for TBTC v2, if there's demand for proxy re-encryption, users pay fees to use those services, and those fees go to stakers. And so I think people have compared like a work token, like a real world analog is like a taxi medallion, where if you have a taxi medallion, you can give people rides and make money. If you have a work token, you can do whatever the work associated with that work token is in order to earn fees and to make money. So the valuation kind of stems from that.
We've got two more I'm going to try to knock out real quick. So one is a question about dev marketing, which I guess is just to say that we're doing it. We've actually laid off hard on biz dev for TBTC v1 because we don't want to spend the time pushing up a token when we know that this next token is going to be, kind of actually what we think can take on WBTC. So you'll notice that's why we've been quiet and why we've kind of backed off on dApp integrations. But expect to see some announcements soon. Particularly, I can be comfortable talking about centralized exchanges with TBTC as well, which is nice. So look for some news. And then the one other question I had on here from Anthony is like squarely in the, I'm not going to say none of your business because that's not fair, but in the, our lawyers don't want us to talk about a category, which is one, that this combined network has very little to do with how much cash in the bank that either company has. It's not a claim. That said, we're both well funded, and I don't think I know that the studio behind.
Yes, I'll give you some more water in a cup.
Will be announcing a fundraise shortly. That's gone quite well, and from what I've heard, the new Cypher team's in good shape.
So someone DM'd me, I don't know if it's in the public chat, but will token holders be able to stake without operating a node? In other words, how can non-technical people participate in the network? And so I think a couple of things. One, like there are centralized pooling solutions, like for example, the one run by CoinList for new. And I'm fairly optimistic that they would want to continue doing that for the upgraded T network. And it's also possible that as part of this network upgrade, that will both communities and teams will be able to simplify the staking process a little bit, so that I think we're still working through exactly what that means. Like, would there be some kind of easier delegation or not? But we're hoping that we'll be able to make it a little bit more approachable for people. And then I believe, and this is probably something that someone from Keep can comment on more, but there's also the coverage pools for TBTC that I imagine people would be able to more passively put their T tokens into as a way to kind of provide a backstop or insurance to the protocol.
I have an occasionally crying child on my end, so I'm going to let someone else in the Keep team sound off on coverage pools, but that's the basic idea.
So I think it's very similar to like, well, maybe I'll be ignorant, but I think it's very similar to like the way that Aave's safety module works. So if folks are familiar with that, similar idea. It's just like a backstop or insurance pool that does not require you to actively run a node.
I'm going to try this again. I think.
Was someone trying to speak? We heard, I'm going to try this again, and then it cut out.
You have two separate lanes. How are these two teams? Why do you guys want the merger? Because it seems like threshold cryptography is going to be a fundamental service, and I think it's essential. And then on the other hand, I think very similarly about TBTC and getting it to Ethereum. Why do these two teams need? I don't necessarily see exactly the value of them coming together, but I have so much faith in these development teams that I want to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, so I think we sounded off a little bit earlier on just kind of like what we were excited about, but I think it's really, TBTC is an application of their threshold cryptography. I think something that became really obvious when
Hey, Matt, listen, Matt, it's very hard to hear you. Is there another mic or a different mic that you can use?
Yeah, how does this sound? No?
I mean, it's still tough for me. How's everybody else?
Yeah, it's pretty quiet.
Hear you, Matt.
All right, guys, let me see if I can. Okay, I'm gonna be the quiet guy. It's all you can play.
Yeah, I mean, that sounded better.
Yeah, that was actually a lot better. But yeah, I mean, I think it's basically like just the thesis is that this is a scenario where 1 + 1 equals something more than 2. So like we're able to combine both sets of stakers, both
Don't tell me 2
communities.
+ 2 = 5.
I don't know what the exact outcome will be, but hopefully it's something greater than the sum of its parts. And I think there's pretty good evidence for that. Like, at a minimum, we'll be able to combine both of the dev team's efforts, both of the community efforts. There's one token, so that's, you're not splitting liquidity. We're not competing with each other on decentralized wrapped Bitcoin solutions. We're not competing with each other on any other future decentralized threshold cryptography services. And we're just able to provide a network that is much more robust and has more functionality than either community or either network will be able to achieve on its own.
Yeah, and this is Victor. I'll comment really quick. When we think about these protocols, like really we should be thinking on 20-year, 30-year time horizon, right? Like that's ultimately the goal, and that's just the beginning. And so from that perspective, we're not building for one use case or 2 use cases or 5 use cases, right? Like we're building for dozens and dozens of different use cases and types of cryptography and different applications that can be enabled. And so when you think about the market of like, hey, how pervasive is encryption? I mean, it is like an enormous opportunity. And so I asked myself, it's like, okay, so you have this modular network, modular components. You have 2 of the best and brightest teams that are already working on a lot of the same tech, have a lot of the same kind of like ethos and perspectives and similar product roadmaps that they want to do. The question is like, okay, can we have, essentially an incredible network that is able to go a little bit slower in the beginning because you have to get the merge done, but then is able to go at twice the speed or maybe even more than twice the speed because you have some of the best and brightest minds collaborating. So for me, it's like a total no-brainer that just makes a ton of sense in the long run.
Okay, great. Well, I'm really excited. Thank you for answering that. Thank you.
Well, I know this is Victor again. I know it's Freddie every time, but hi. I know we're just about at time. Want to be respectful of folks. So if there's any like pressing questions or comments, like definitely speak up now. This is your time. And if not, then this will be recorded and shared out. But listen, the forums are available, our DMs are available, the Discord group, like chats and channels, like all of that is available to you. So please make sure to make your voice heard. It's extremely important.
Victor, you wanted to talk about the 10 billion tokens, the quantity, or did I understand it bad?
Oh my God, yeah, we didn't even get to that. I mean, there seems to be a chorus of folks that 10 billion is a lot. So maybe what we can do is post on one of the forum threads and see what number of people are feeling like most excited about. And then try to gauge it from there and update the proposal. Does anybody have like immediate thoughts that they want to share?
Does the network become?
Oh, never mind.
Okay, thank you. I think one of the other developers was bringing up in one of the other calls could the network become more secure if there's an unlimited supply of tokens? Does that enhance the security of it against attacks?
Yes. Yeah.
So what would be the reason to limit? Why would we not opt for that method then?
Yeah. So I mean, I think as token holders, people are always trying to figure out the trade-off between like value accrual and how much work they're going to have to do to get that value. And so I think, if you're a staker, people are like, yes, inflate, because, you're going to hopefully be keeping your same pro rata ownership in the whole system. If you're a passive holder, you might want inflation to be lower because you're not planning on staking. And so you're going to be getting diluted over time, even though that also means you didn't have to do the work of staking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the trade-off. So in a sense, as I understand it, this proposal is an unlimited supply in that there's not a max cap that we will hit. The initial supply is 10 billion. And then there is future inflation somewhere between 2 to 10% a year. And we're kicking the can a little bit on deciding exactly how that works because there's some competing ideas. So I do think that is important, and that if you use your emissions properly, that it is a more secure system. All of that said, though, I just wanted to throw out the one thing that my only horse in this race for the token number is I just do not want 2 billion to be the token number for the initial supply. And the reason that I've been kind of fighting that is that I don't want the market to look at our 2 tokens and be like, oh, add this and then that. I think that that's really reductive and probably not how the token prices will end up working long term. It's definitely not how the network will work long term. So for me, it's like whatever our initial token supply should be, make it a prime that's not 2. So 3 billion, 5 billion, 7 billion, and then you can start breaking into non-primes, as long as it's not 2 or half, both of which I think the market would probably get kind of obsessed with and confused by. So yeah, sorry, I took that question in a different direction, but.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. And as Victor already said, we want to hear from you guys on this. So once again, that was one of the reasons that we wanted to have a joint community call before any signal came up. So if somebody has a better idea that they're really passionate about for the total number, definitely drop it on the forums or in a Discord channel, and we can absolutely discuss it more as a group. Okay, guys, so we are over time. I think at this point, definitely keep an eye out for an upcoming signal in both communities. We're really, really, really excited that we've reached this point in the process. If nobody else has any burning questions, I think now we can wrap this up and move the conversation back to Discord and the forums.
Yep. Thanks, folks. Thanks for joining. If you have anything else you want to add post this call, like Will said, either the Discords, either the governance forums, and we're looking forward to it.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Awesome. Take care. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Good luck.